My parents humiliated me by saying I would never be as good as my brother. So I said, "Then tell him to pay the bills from now on. You won't get another cent from me." They still mocked me, saying it wasn't my money, but the family's. Before continuing the story, let us know in the comments which city you're watching from. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell so you won't miss more stories, and leave your like on the video. My name is Alex, and for 23 years, I've been the family ghost. You know that feeling when you're standing right there, but everyone looks through you like you're made of air? That's been my entire existence. Growing up, I was always the one locked in her room with the computer, while my older brother Marcus was the pride of the family. Every family dinner, every gathering, every conversation somehow circled back to his achievements. Got a promotion at 25? Marcus is incredible. Bought his first car? What a responsible young man. Meanwhile, I spent my nights hunched over my laptop, teaching myself makeup techniques, video editing, and diving deep into personal finance videos until 3 in the morning. "What are you doing in there all night?" my mother would ask, poking her head into my room around midnight. "Playing games again?" "Learning," I'd mumble, not bothering to explain that I was studying color theory and watching business tutorials. What was the point? She'd already decided it was just girl stuff, meaningless entertainment that would never amount to anything real. My father was even worse. "Stop wasting time with that computer nonsense," he'd say whenever he caught me editing a video or practicing a makeup look. "Why don't you help your mother with dinner instead? That's more useful for a young woman." But Marcus? Oh, Marcus could spend entire weekends playing video games, and somehow that was networking and strategic thinking. When he finally got his marketing degree, after changing majors twice and taking an extra year, the celebration lasted 3 days. When I started my beauty and lifestyle channel and got my first 1,000 subscribers, my father literally said, "That's nice, honey. Can you take out the trash?" The pattern was so clear it hurt. Marcus breathed, and they applauded. I achieved something real, something I'd built from scratch with zero support, and they treated it like a cute hobby that would eventually fade away. "You know your brother is naturally gifted with people," my mother would tell neighbors, her voice swelling with pride. "He's going to run his own company someday." "Alex, well," she likes to play with makeup, as if I hadn't spent 2 years learning lighting, building an audience, understanding algorithms, and teaching myself business basics they couldn't even pronounce. As if my videos weren't helping other young women feel confident and learn skills. As if the small but growing income I was generating wasn't actual money. But here's what really got to me, what still keeps me awake some nights. Every single achievement of mine got minimized, but every tiny step Marcus took got magnified into this grand success story. When he got his first apartment, it was, "Marcus is so independent and mature." When I mentioned wanting to move out, it was, "Why would you leave family? You have everything you need here." The truth was, they needed me here. Not because they loved having me around, but because someone had to be the invisible support system. Someone had to be the one who never asked for anything, never demanded recognition, never expected to be seen as anything more than the helper in the background. And slowly, so slowly I didn't even notice it happening. That's exactly what I became. The daughter who stayed quiet during family photos while Marcus got positioned in the center. The sister who cleaned up after family gatherings while he got to socialize with relatives who asked about his career plans. The young woman who made herself smaller and smaller until she practically disappeared, convinced that maybe they were right. Maybe I really wasn't as good as my golden child brother. But something was growing inside me during those late nights with my laptop. Something they couldn't see because they weren't looking. While they celebrated Marcus for doing the bare minimum, I was building something real. While they praised him for getting a regular job, I was creating content that actually mattered to people. I just didn't know yet that this invisible daughter was about to become very visible in ways they never expected. It started innocently enough. I was 19, and my little beauty channel had just hit its first milestone. 5,000 subscribers and my first real sponsorship deal. $300 for featuring a skincare brand I actually loved. I was over the moon. "That's wonderful, sweetheart," my mother said when I showed her the email, though her smile seemed forced. "Since you're making some money now, maybe you could help with the electric bill this month. It's been a bit high." "Just until Friday," she said. "Just this once." The bill was $87, and I handed over the cash without hesitation. It felt good to contribute, to finally be useful to my family in a way they could understand. Marcus, meanwhile, had just started his entry-level marketing job, and was living paycheck to paycheck, according to everyone's constant worry about his finances. Poor Marcus is learning to be responsible, my father would say. We shouldn't burden him with household expenses while he's getting established. But I was getting established too. My subscriber count was growing steadily, and brands were starting to notice. I had reinvested every penny back into better equipment, lighting, and products to review. My tiny room had transformed into a professional-looking setup that I was genuinely proud of. 2 weeks after the electric bill, it was the gas bill. Then groceries. Just this week, my mother would say. We're a little short, always temporary, always urgent, always directed at me, never at Marcus. By my 20th birthday, it had become routine. The first of every month, I'd get a text message with a list. Electric $92, gas $34, internet $67, groceries $120. Can you transfer by Wednesday? I'd built up to 15,000 subscribers by then, and my monthly income had grown to around $800. Not life-changing money, but enough to feel proud of what I'd accomplished. Enough to start dreaming about moving out, maybe getting my own place, building my brand into something bigger. Instead, I was transferring $600 a month to my parents' account. It's only fair, my father explained when I finally worked up the courage to ask why Marcus wasn't contributing. You're living here rent-free, eating our food, using our utilities. Since you're making money from home, it makes sense that you'd cover the home expenses. The logic seemed sound, even though something about it felt off. Marcus lived here too, ate our food too, used the same utilities, but he had real job expenses. Gas for his car, work clothes, lunch meetings. My work happened in my bedroom, so obviously I had no real expenses. Right? Wrong. I was spending my own money on every single thing that appeared in my videos. Makeup, skincare, accessories, lighting equipment, editing software subscriptions. None of that was free. But when I mentioned it, my father waved his hand dismissively. Those are your hobbies, Alex. We're talking about actual family responsibilities. My hobbies. The work that was paying their bills was just my hobbies. The worst part wasn't even the money, though watching my savings account stay flat month after month was depressing enough. The worst part was the complete lack of recognition. Every month, I'd transfer hundreds of dollars to keep our household running. And every month, the family narrative stayed the same. Marcus was the responsible one, the one who understood real-world obligations, while I was still just playing around with my computer. I'm so proud of how Marcus is maturing, my mother told our neighbor one afternoon, right in front of me. He's really stepping up as the man of the house, helping with all our expenses. I looked up from my laptop, confused. But I'm the one who— Alex, honey, don't interrupt adult conversation, my mother said smoothly. Why don't you go practice your makeup or something? That night, I stared at my bank account. 11 months of contributing to family expenses, and somehow Marcus was getting credit for my financial responsibility. I was literally paying for the privilege of being invisible, funding my own erasure from the family success story. But I kept paying, kept transferring, kept hoping that eventually they'd see what I was doing, that eventually my contributions would matter enough to acknowledge. The lies started small, but they grew into something monstrous that made me question my own reality. It was during one of our extended family barbecues when I first noticed the pattern. My uncle was asking about household expenses, making conversation about rising costs and how hard it was for families to manage everything these days. Oh, we're blessed to have Marcus, my father said, flipping burgers with obvious pride. He's really stepped up since getting his job. Takes care of the electric bill, gas, even helps with groceries. Real man of the house material. I nearly choked on my lemonade. I had literally transferred money for the electric bill 3 days earlier. The gas bill had come out of my account automatically for the past 8 months. I'd bought the groceries we were eating that very afternoon. That's wonderful, my uncle replied, clapping Marcus on the shoulder. Good to see a young man taking responsibility. Marcus just nodded and smiled, not correcting a single word, not mentioning that he'd never paid a single utility bill in his life. I waited for the conversation to move on, then approached my mother in the kitchen. Mom, why did Dad tell everyone Marcus pays the electric bill? She looked at me with that patient expression she used when she thought I was being silly. Well, honey, Marcus handles a lot of the family finances. You just help out here and there with your little income. My little income. The income that had grown to over $1,000 a month and was now covering nearly half of all household expenses. But I literally pay the electric bill. It comes out of my account. You give money to the family and we allocate it where it's needed, my mother said, as if explaining something obvious to a child. Marcus makes the financial decisions about which bills get paid when. That's very different from just handing over some cash. That's when it clicked. They weren't just taking credit for my money, they were systematically rewriting the narrative to make Marcus the financial hero, while I remained the invisible contributor. The pattern became impossible to ignore once I started paying attention. At family dinners, when costs came up, my father would say things like, "Marcus has been handling our utility situation really well," or, "We're lucky Marcus is so good with managing the household budget." I was the one checking account balances, setting up automatic payments, and tracking expenses in a spreadsheet I'd created. But somehow, Marcus was the one with financial skills. The most infuriating part was how they gendered everything. When I tried to discuss household budgeting, my father would say, "Let's not worry your pretty head about numbers, Alex. That's man's work." But when it came time to actually fund those budgets, suddenly it was my responsibility as the daughter, living at home. "Women are naturally better at the day-to-day stuff," my mother would explain to her friends. "Alex helps with the small household things, but Marcus handles the big financial planning." Small household things. I was covering mortgage payments during tight months, but that was just small household things. The breaking point came during a family dinner when my cousin asked about our family's financial strategy for handling inflation. My father launched into a detailed explanation about how Marcus had restructured our entire budget and taken over as the family's financial planner. Every word was a lie. Every strategy he described was something I had researched, proposed, and implemented. Every success he was attributing to Marcus was actually my work, my money, my late nights figuring out how to stretch our budget. "Alex just focuses on her makeup videos," my father concluded with a dismissive laugh. "She's not really interested in serious financial planning. That's more of a man's domain anyway." I sat there, fork halfway to my mouth, watching my entire contribution to this family get erased and handed to my brother like some kind of participation trophy. 2 years of supporting this household financially, and not only was I getting zero recognition, my actual work was being used to build up Marcus's reputation as some kind of financial genius. That night, I pulled up my banking app and started scrolling through months of transactions, transfer after transfer after transfer. Thousands of dollars flowing from my account to theirs, while they told everyone that their son was the family's financial backbone. I wasn't just invisible anymore. I was actively being erased, my contributions rewritten and redistributed to maintain their preferred version of reality where men handled money and women played with makeup. But I was done being a ghost in my own life. My father's birthday dinner was supposed to be a celebration. The whole family gathered around our dining room table, wine glasses raised, everyone sharing their favorite memories and expressing gratitude. It should have been a beautiful evening. Instead, it became the night everything changed. We'd just finished the main course, a meal I'd paid for, by the way, when my father asked for grocery money the day before, when the conversation turned to family achievements. My aunt was gushing about her daughter's new job, and somehow that led to my parents bragging about Marcus's recent promotion. "We're just so proud," my mother beamed, reaching over to squeeze Marcus's hand. "He's really become the man of this house. Handles all our finances, keeps everything organized, always thinking about the family's future." I took a large gulp of wine and tried to swallow my frustration along with it. Same lies, different audience. That's when my father, emboldened by the attention and the alcohol, decided to add his own commentary. He raised his glass with a wide smile and said, "Here's the truth about my children. Marcus here, he's got what it takes. Natural leadership, financial intelligence, real ambition. He's going places." He paused, looking directly at me with what I can only describe as pity mixed with condescension. "Alex, well, bless her heart, she tries. But you know what they say, you can't make a silk purse out of a sow's ear. She's never going to be as good as her brother. Marcus knows how to take care of family." The table went quiet for a moment before nervous laughter rippled around the room. Someone made a joke about sibling rivalry. Another person mentioned how different children can be. The conversation moved on like nothing had happened, but something had broken inside me. I sat there, smile frozen on my face, while my brain did rapid calculations. In the past 12 months alone, I had transferred over $7,000 to my parents' account. $7,000 that had kept this household running while they told everyone that Marcus was our financial savior. Marcus, who still asked me to borrow $20 for gas money. Marcus, who had never once looked at a household bill or worried about whether we could afford groceries. Marcus, who was apparently naturally gifted at managing money he'd never actually managed. "More wine, sweetheart?" my mother asked me, already reaching for the bottle. "I'm fine. I managed, though nothing about this situation was fine. The evening dragged on. More stories about Marcus's brilliance, more casual dismissals of my work, more lies about who was actually keeping this family financially stable. By the time dessert was served, a cake I'd also paid for, I felt like I was going to explode. As everyone was getting ready to leave, my mother cornered me in the kitchen with her usual monthly request disguised as casual conversation. "Oh, Alex. Honey, before I forget, we're going to need paper towels, toilet paper, and some other household essentials this week. Could you pick those up when you go out?" Paper towels. After listening to my father announce to our entire extended family that I'd never be as good as my brother, after watching them credit Marcus for my financial contributions for the 100th time, after being reduced to nothing more than a failed disappointment who tries, my mother wanted to make sure I knew my real value to this family. I was the girl who bought paper towels. "Sure, Mom," I said, because what else was I supposed to say? But inside, something fundamental had shifted. That night, I sat in my room with my laptop open, staring at my bank statements. Every transfer, every payment, every time I'd prioritize this family's needs over my own financial goals. The numbers told a story completely different from the one my father had shared at dinner. I wasn't the family disappointment. I was the family's secret weapon, the invisible financial engine they relied on while publicly crediting someone else for my work. But I was done being invisible. I was done being the sow's ear in their silk purse fantasy, and I was definitely done buying paper towels for people who thought I'd never amount to anything. It was time for them to see exactly how good I really was, by showing them what happened when I stopped being good to them. I couldn't sleep after the birthday dinner. Every time I closed my eyes, I heard my father's voice. "You can't make a silk purse out of a sow's ear." The dismissive laughter from the table. The way Marcus just sat there, accepting credit for work he'd never done, money he'd never earned. At 2 a.m, I gave up on sleep and opened my laptop. I started with my banking app, but this time I wasn't just glancing at recent transactions. I was going back to the beginning, to that first innocent $87 electric bill that started this whole mess. I opened a spreadsheet and began what I can only describe as an archaeological dig through my own financial exploitation. Month by month, transfer by transfer, I documented everything. Not just the obvious bills, but all of it. The emergency car repair for Marcus that I'd covered. The family vacation deposit that somehow became my responsibility. The countless grocery runs, utility payments, and random expenses that had been casually shifted onto my shoulders over the past 3 years. The numbers were staggering. Electric bills, $2,147 over 3 years. Gas bills, $1,456. Internet, $2,412. Those were just the monthly utilities that had somehow become my responsibility because I worked from home. But then there were the extras, the emergency expenses that were never really emergencies. Marcus needed new work clothes, $340. The family needed a new washing machine, $680. Christmas gifts for extended family, $290. Marcus's car insurance when he was between paychecks, $150 monthly for 8 months. Every single transaction had a story behind it. A sob story, usually, or a guilt trip about family loyalty, or a casual assumption that since I was just playing around online, my money wasn't really mine anyway. By 4 a.m, I had reached a total that made my stomach turn, $11,247, nearly $12,000. In 3 years, I had transferred almost $12,000 to keep this family running while they told everyone that Marcus was the financially responsible one. But it wasn't just the money that exhausted me as I stared at that spreadsheet. It was everything else these numbers represented. Every time I'd eaten ramen for a week so I could cover their emergency. Every time I'd delayed buying equipment for my channel because family expenses came first. Every opportunity I'd missed. Every investment in my own future I'd postponed. Because being a good daughter meant putting everyone else's needs before my own. I thought about the equipment I could have bought with that money, the courses I could have taken, the apartment deposit I could have saved, the financial security I could have built for myself instead of building it for people who saw me as their backup bank account. I scrolled through my channel analytics, looking at the growth I'd managed despite everything. 32,000 subscribers now, brand partnerships that were getting bigger and better, revenue that was approaching $1,500 a month when I wasn't sending half of it to my parents. But what really broke my heart was the comment section under my latest video. Message after message from young women thanking me for helping them feel confident, for teaching them techniques they couldn't afford to learn elsewhere, for showing them that they could build something meaningful even if nobody else believed in them. I was inspiring other women to value themselves while completely failing to value myself. The exhaustion hit me then. Not physical tiredness, but a bone-deep emotional exhaustion that comes from years of being undervalued and exploited by the people who were supposed to love you most. I wasn't angry anymore. I was just tired of carrying everyone else while being treated like I wasn't carrying anything at all. I saved the spreadsheet and titled it, The Real Family Financial History. Then I sat back and looked at my reflection in my dark bedroom window. The girl staring back at me looked older than 23, worn down by years of making herself smaller, so everyone else could feel bigger. For the first time in my adult life, I asked myself a question that should have been obvious. What would happen if I stopped? What would happen to this household if the invisible daughter became actually invisible? If the money they depended on but never acknowledged suddenly disappeared? If Marcus had to prove he was really the financial genius they claimed he was? The thought should have scared me. Instead, it felt like the first deep breath I'd taken in years. I wasn't a sowsier. I was the silk purse they'd been carrying around, taking for granted, while pretending someone else had sewn me together. Time to show them what they'd actually been carrying all along. The next morning, I woke up with a clarity I hadn't felt in years. The exhaustion from the night before had transformed into something sharper, more focused. I had a mission now. I spent the entire day creating what I privately called my freedom file. Every bank statement, every transfer confirmation, every text message requesting money. I screenshot everything and organized it chronologically. 3 years of financial exploitation, documented with receipts. But this wasn't about revenge. This was about truth. About finally having concrete proof of my contributions, when they inevitably tried to gaslight me into believing I was being dramatic or ungrateful. I printed everything. Bank statements, transfer receipts, even screenshots of text messages where they'd asked for money and promised it was just this once, or temporary. The stack of papers was 3 inches thick. 3 inches of evidence that I'd been supporting this family while they gave credit to someone else. As I organized the documents, I kept finding details I'd forgotten, like how I'd covered Marcus's car payment for 2 months when he was adjusting to his new job responsibilities, or the time I'd paid for my father's dental work because it was an emergency that couldn't wait until his next paycheck. Every single expense had been framed as urgent, temporary, or just good family values, but when you laid them all out chronologically, the pattern was clear. I had been systematically transformed from daughter to ATM, so gradually that I'd barely noticed it happening. The most damning evidence was in my own notes. I'd been tracking expenses for tax purposes since my channel income had grown, and I'd noted the purpose of every family transfer. Electric bill. Mom said Marcus is saving up for apartment. Groceries. Dad's overtime got cut this week. Marcus car insurance, helping until he gets established. Marcus still lived at home. Dad's overtime had been restored 6 months ago. Every justification had been temporary, but my financial responsibility had become permanent. I also printed out screenshots from my channel's analytics. Subscriber growth, engagement rates, brand partnership emails, revenue reports. Everything that proved this wasn't just a hobby or side hustle. This was a legitimate business that I'd built from nothing while financially supporting 3 adults who dismissed it as playing with makeup. By evening, I had created 2 identical files. One for me, one for them. Not because I planned to hand it over immediately, but because I wanted to be prepared for the conversation that was coming. But first, I needed to practice saying the word that had been foreign to me for 3 years. No. I stood in front of my bedroom mirror and tried different versions. No, I can't cover that. No, that's not my responsibility. No, ask Marcus since he's apparently so good with finances. It felt strange, almost wrong. I'd been conditioned to be the agreeable daughter, the helper, the one who never caused problems. Saying no felt like breaking character, but I thought about that comment section under my videos. All those young women thanking me for teaching them self-confidence, for showing them their worth. How could I inspire others to value themselves when I clearly didn't value myself? I opened my laptop and started typing an email to myself. Dear Alex, you are not responsible for funding other people's lives. You are not obligated to be invisible so others can shine. You are not required to accept credit for other people's accomplishments being transferred to them. Your money is your money. Your success is your success. You deserve recognition for your contributions. You deserve respect for your achievements. You deserve to put your own financial future first. Say no. Mean it. Don't justify it. You are enough, exactly as you are. I saved it in my drafts folder. a reminder for when my resolve started to weaken. Then I opened my banking app and did something I'd never done before. I calculated how much money I'd have in my account if I stopped making family transfers immediately. With my current income of $1,500 a month, minus my actual personal expenses of about $400, I could be saving over $1,000 monthly. In 1 year, I could have enough for a solid emergency fund, a new apartment, and significant investments in growing my business. In 2 years, I could be completely financially independent, but only if I stopped being everyone else's financial safety net. I looked at my calendar. Tomorrow was the first of the month, bill day, text message day, the day when my mother would send me the list of expenses that had somehow become my responsibility. For the first time in 3 years, I was going to respond differently. I wasn't going to be angry or dramatic. I wasn't going to lecture or blame. I was simply going to say no, provide the documentation of why, and redirect their requests to the person they'd been telling everyone was actually handling our finances anyway. If Marcus was really as financially capable as they claimed, tomorrow he'd get the chance to prove it. The text came at exactly 9:17 a.m., just like clockwork. Electric $94, gas $41, internet $67, groceries needed $150. Can you transfer by Wednesday? Thanks, honey. I stared at my phone for a full minute before typing back. No. Just that. No explanation, no apology, no alternative suggestion. Just no. My phone rang within 30 seconds. Alex? What do you mean, no? My mother's voice was confused, like I'd responded in a foreign language. I mean, no, I won't be transferring money for bills anymore. Is everything okay? Are you having financial problems with your little channel? My little channel. Even now, even when asking for my money, she couldn't acknowledge what I'd built. I'm fine, Mom. I just won't be covering family expenses anymore. Marcus can handle it since everyone says he's so good with finances. There was a pause. Alex, don't be ridiculous. Marcus has his own expenses. You live here, you should contribute. I have been contributing. For 3 years. We need to talk. Family dinner tonight. I hung up before she could argue. That evening, I walked into the dining room with my printed file folder. My parents were already seated, Marcus looking confused about why he'd been summoned to what was clearly going to be a serious conversation. I sat down and opened the folder. We need to discuss family finances. My father immediately bristled. Alex, I don't think you understand how... I understand perfectly. I pulled out the first bank statement. In the past 3 years, I've transferred $11,847 into this family's expenses. Electric bills, gas, internet, groceries, emergencies, and random expenses that somehow became my responsibility. I spread out the papers like evidence at a trial, because that's what this was. A trial where I was both prosecutor and defendant, accused of being ungrateful while providing evidence of my own exploitation. Now I keep hearing from everyone about how Marcus handles our family finances and how he's such a responsible financial planner. But according to these bank records, Marcus has contributed exactly $0 to household expenses. Marcus shifted uncomfortably. Alex, that's not really how... How what? How money works? I pulled out another set of papers. These are screenshots from 3 weeks ago where Dad told the whole barbecue that Marcus handles the electric bill. This is the electric bill payment confirmation from my account, dated 2 days before that barbecue. My father's face was reddening. Young lady, I don't appreciate your tone, and I don't appreciate being erased. I kept my voice level, professional. Every month for 3 years, I've funded this household. Every family gathering for 3 years, Marcus gets credit for my financial contributions. I'm done. You're being dramatic, my mother said, though her voice lacked conviction. We're a family. Families help each other. Families also acknowledge each other's contributions. When's the last time anyone thanked me for paying a bill? When's the last time anyone mentioned my name when bragging about our household financial management? Women don't need to be recognized for every little thing they do, my father said. And there it was, the sexism laid bare. That's just being a good daughter. Marcus has bigger responsibilities. Like what? I interrupted. What financial responsibilities does Marcus have that I don't know about? Silence. Because according to my records, his biggest financial responsibility has been asking me to borrow gas money. You don't understand, my mother said, trying a different approach. Marcus is planning for his future, building his career. He needs to save his money for important things. And I don't? My business doesn't matter? My future doesn't count? I pulled out my channel analytics. I have 32,000 subscribers and growing brand partnerships. This isn't a hobby. This is a career that I've built while funding this family. It's not the same thing, my father said dismissively. Playing with makeup online isn't a real job. The $15,000 I made last year says otherwise. The taxes I paid on that income say otherwise. The household bills I covered with that income definitely say otherwise. I stood up and gathered my papers. Here's what's going to happen. I'm no longer covering any household expenses. If Marcus is really the financial genius you keep telling everyone he is, he can prove it by actually handling finances. This is ungrateful and disrespectful, my father said, his voice rising. After everything we've done for you? After everything I've done for you, I corrected. 3 years of being your invisible bank account while watching someone else get credit for my contributions. That stops now. Fine, my mother said, clearly thinking this was a bluff that would last maybe a week. Marcus can handle the bills. I looked at Marcus, who had been suspiciously quiet through this entire confrontation. Can you? Can you handle $350 a month in bills on top of your own expenses? His silence was answer enough. I'm not trying to hurt anyone, I said as I headed toward the door. I'm just done being invisible. From now on, I'm taking care of my own financial future. Marcus can take care of his. Behind me, I heard my father mutter, "Selfish girl thinks she knows better than her family." But for the first time in years, I felt like I actually did know better. I knew better than to accept being diminished. I knew better than to fund my own erasure. And I knew better than to believe that my contributions didn't matter just because they came with 2 X chromosomes. The next few days were tense, filled with the kind of charged silence that follows a family earthquake. I could hear hushed conversations between my parents that stopped whenever I entered a room. Marcus avoided eye contact entirely, probably hoping this whole thing would blow over if he just pretended it wasn't happening. But I wasn't backing down. Wednesday came and went, the day I would normally have transferred money for the bills. My phone stayed silent. No reminder texts, no casual requests, no guilt trips about family responsibility. Thursday morning, my mother knocked on my bedroom door. "Alex, honey, I think we need to discuss your new boundaries." I looked up from my laptop where I was editing my latest video. "What about them?" "Well, the electric bill is due Friday, and Marcus is having some cash flow issues this week. Maybe just this once." "No. You're not even going to hear me out?" "I don't need to." The answer is no. Bills are no longer my responsibility. Remember? Marcus handles our finances now. Her patient expression cracked slightly. "Alex, you're being unreasonable. We raised you, housed you, fed you. The least you can do is contribute when we're in a tight spot. I contributed for 3 years. Now it's someone else's turn." I turned back to my laptop. Marcus should be able to handle 1 electric bill if he's really as financially capable as everyone claims. That evening, things escalated. My father barged into my room without knocking, holding a printed electric bill, like it was evidence of a crime. "This is due tomorrow, and your brother doesn't have the money right now. Are you really going to let our electricity get shut off because you're having some kind of tantrum?" I saved my work and turned to face him. "Are you really going to let our electricity get shut off because you spent 3 years lying about who actually pays the bills?" "This is ridiculous, Alex. You live here too. These are shared expenses." "Great. Then let's actually share them. Marcus pays this month. I'll pay next month. Fair?" My father's face reddened. "That's not how it works. Marcus has real responsibilities. And I don't?" I stood up, feeling that familiar fire building in my chest. My business is growing faster than his career. I'm making more money than he is. I've been financially responsible for 3 years while he's been playing pretend financial advisor. So explain to me why his money is too important to spend on bills, but mine isn't. "Because you're a woman living in your parents' house?" he exploded. "This is what daughters do. They help their families until they get married and become someone else's responsibility." There it was. The truth behind all the financial manipulation, all the credit stealing, all the dismissal of my achievements. In their minds, I wasn't a person building a career and a future. I was just a temporary resident waiting to become someone else's problem. "I'm not anyone's responsibility," I said quietly. "And I'm not anyone's bank account. Find another way to pay the bill." "You're being selfish and disrespectful," my mother said from the doorway, where she'd appeared to back up my father's tantrum. "After everything we've done for you?" "After everything I've done for you," I corrected, pulling out my phone. "Want me to read you the list of every bill I've paid? Every emergency I've covered? Every time I chose family financial stability over my own savings goals? That money wasn't even really yours," my father said, and my blood went cold. "That was family money. Money you earned living in our house, eating our food, using our internet. You don't get to act like you were doing us some huge favor. Family money. 3 years of building a business, creating content, working with brands, paying taxes on my income, and he thought my money belonged to the family. Then I guess the family is about to learn to live without family money, I said. Because this bank account is now closed to everyone but me. Fine, my father shouted. Be selfish, but don't come crying to us when you realize how good you had it here. And don't come asking me for money when you realize how much you actually depended on me, I shot back. They stormed out, slamming my door hard enough to rattle the walls. I sat back down at my laptop, hands shaking slightly from adrenaline, and did something I'd never done before. I opened my banking app and changed all my account passwords. No more automatic transfers. No more easy access. No more assuming my money was available for family emergencies. My phone buzzed with a text from Marcus. Alex, can we talk? This is getting out of hand. I typed back, what's out of hand is me funding a household for 3 years while everyone pretended you were doing it. Want to talk? Figure out how to pay the electric bill first. That night, I heard my parents on the phone with relatives, probably trying to borrow money for the utilities. The conversation was muffled, but I caught phrases like, going through a difficult phase, and doesn't understand family values. I put on my headphones and kept working on my video. A tutorial about building confidence and setting boundaries. The irony wasn't lost on me. I was teaching other women to value themselves while my own family was learning exactly how much they'd been undervaluing me. The electricity stayed on. Somehow, they found the money. But the dynamic had fundamentally shifted. I was no longer the invisible safety net, and they were starting to realize what that actually meant. The smear campaign started subtly, the way these things always do. First, it was my aunt calling to check on me after hearing I was going through a difficult time. Then my cousin mentioned that my mother had told her I was struggling with some jealousy issues regarding Marcus's success. But the real masterpiece was my mother's Facebook post. Sometimes as parents, we have to love our children through their difficult phases, praying for wisdom as we navigate family challenges. Some children struggle with gratitude and comparing themselves to their siblings. Motherhood. Family. Blessed. 12 comments of support. Stay strong, Mama. Difficult children are often God's way of teaching us patience. Don't give up on her. She'll come around. I screenshot the post before she inevitably deleted it, adding it to my growing collection of evidence. Because while my family was busy rewriting history, I was documenting the real version. The narrative they were constructing was masterful in its simplicity. I was the jealous, ungrateful daughter who couldn't handle her brother's success. I was having some kind of breakdown, possibly driven by envy, and my refusal to help family was just acting out. I heard Alex is going through something, my neighbor mentioned when I was getting the mail. Your mother mentioned she's been a bit difficult lately. Growing up is hard, I guess. Difficult. That was the word they'd chosen. Not financially independent or setting boundaries or refusing to be exploited. Just difficult. The most infuriating part was how they managed to completely erase the financial aspect. When people asked about specifics, the story became, Alex doesn't want to help with household chores anymore. Or, she's upset that Marcus is doing so well in his career. Household chores. 3 years of covering major expenses had been reduced to household chores, but their biggest mistake was trying to control a narrative in the age of social media, when one of the people involved actually understood social media. I'd been building my platform for years. I understood storytelling, audience engagement, and the power of authentic voice. They were playing checkers while I was playing chess. I didn't post anything dramatic or angry. Instead, I simply started sharing more of my real life. Behind-the-scenes content of building my business, screenshots of brand partnership emails with the dollar amounts visible, photos of my workspace with professional equipment I'd bought myself. Grateful for everyone who supported my small business journey. I posted with a photo of my latest paycheck. It's been amazing to build something from nothing and actually support myself doing what I love. Independence feels incredible. The comments were overwhelmingly positive. Other young women sharing their own business success stories, people asking for advice about starting online ventures, brands reaching out about potential partnerships. But my family's friends were watching too, and some of them were good at math. When my mother posted about teaching children the value of hard work and family contribution, someone commented, "That's so wonderful that Marcus is able to help with household expenses while building his career. Alex's business seems to be doing really well too. She must be such a help to the family." My mother liked the comment, but didn't respond. 2 days later, She posted again, "Proud of my son for being such a responsible young man. Some children just naturally understand family values and financial responsibility." This time, one of my father's coworkers commented, "Alex's makeup videos are really impressive. My daughter loves them. She must be making good money from all those subscribers. Lucky you to have two financially successful kids." That post was deleted within an hour. I continued sharing my journey authentically, never directly calling out my family's lies, just telling my own truth. Success stories, business growth, financial goals I was working toward. My audience was growing, and so was my income. But the most satisfying moment came when I posted a photo of my new savings account balance. A month's worth of money that would have normally gone to family expenses, now sitting in my own emergency fund. 1 month of prioritizing my own financial future, I captioned it. It's amazing what you can accomplish when you stop undervaluing your own contributions. My cousin commented, "Wait, weren't you helping with family bills? Mom said Marcus was handling all that." I replied publicly, "That was the story, but the bank statements tell a different version. Sometimes the person getting credit isn't the person doing the work." Within hours, that post had 43 comments from family friends asking questions, expressing surprise, and slowly beginning to piece together the real story. That evening, my phone exploded with angry texts from my parents. "You're embarrassing the family. This is private business. Take that post down immediately." I turned my phone off and kept working on my content. They'd spent weeks trying to control the narrative about me. Now it was my turn to tell my own story. And my story was about a young woman who'd been financially supporting her family while being told she'd never be as good as her brother, until she decided to show them exactly how good she was by keeping her money for herself. The best part? Every day I didn't transfer money to them was another day my savings account grew, my business expanded, and my independence became more solid. They could call me difficult all they wanted, but difficult daughters who pay their own bills don't need anyone's approval. They tried everything. 6 weeks into my financial independence experiment, the emergencies started coming from every possible angle. Not directly from my parents. They'd learned that frontal assaults didn't work. Instead, they deployed the extended family network like a coordinated military operation. It started with my grandmother calling, her voice shaky with worry. "Alex, dear, your mother mentioned that Marcus is having some car trouble and might lose his job if he can't get to work. She seemed to think you might be able to help with the repair costs." My grandmother was 87 years old and had no idea she was being used as emotional manipulation. She genuinely thought she was helping solve a family crisis. "How much does the repair cost, Grandma?" I think she said around $400. Such a shame when young people are just starting their careers. $400. Exactly the amount I'd been transferring monthly before I stopped. What a coincidence. "I'm sure Marcus will figure something out," I said gently. "He's very resourceful." 2 days later, it was my aunt. "Your father mentioned that you might be able to help with a small family emergency. Nothing major, just a temporary cash flow issue." "What kind of emergency?" A pause. "Well, I'm not sure of all the details, but it sounded like maybe some unexpected medical bills." "Whose medical bills?" Another pause. I'm not entirely sure. Your mother was a bit vague. She just said the family could use some financial support and thought you'd want to help. Medical bills that no one could identify, for someone no one could name, in an amount that happened to match my previous monthly contribution. "I think there might be some miscommunication," I told my aunt. "I'm not the family's emergency fund anymore." The indirect approach evolved. Family friends started reaching out, having heard through the grapevine that I was doing well financially and might be able to help with various family needs. Always vague, always urgent, always coincidentally within my income range. But the most insulting attempt came 3 weeks later when Marcus finally approached me directly. I was in the kitchen making coffee when he appeared, looking uncomfortable but determined. "Alex, I know things have been weird between us lately, but I really need your help." I didn't look up from my coffee maker. "With what?" "My car insurance is due, and I'm a little short this month, just until my next paycheck comes in. I'll pay you back." I turned to face him. "How much?" $150. The exact amount he'd never actually paid for car insurance, because I'd been covering it for 8 months before my financial independence declaration. "When did you start paying your own car insurance, Marcus?" He looked confused. "What do you mean?" "I mean, for the past 8 months, car insurance payments have been coming out of my account. So I'm curious when you took over that responsibility." His face went red. That was different. That was you helping family. And this is you handling your own adult responsibilities. Figure it out." "Come on, Alex. Don't be like this. It's just one bill. It's never just one bill. And you know what? You're right about something. You will pay me back. You'll pay me back by proving that you can actually handle the financial responsibilities everyone keeps claiming you're so good at. He left the kitchen muttering about how I'd changed, become selfish, lost sight of family values. But the real test came 2 months later with what they probably thought was their masterstroke. A genuine family emergency. My father called me at work, his voice tight with stress. Alex, your mother is in the hospital. She fell and broke her wrist. We need help with the emergency room copay. For a moment, my resolve wavered. This wasn't a fake crisis or manipulative sob story. This was real. How much is the copay? $300. We're short because of some unexpected expenses this month. I paused thinking. Then I asked the question that clarified everything. What unexpected expenses? Well, Marcus's car insurance was higher than we thought, and the electric bill was more than budgeted, and all the bills I used to cover. The unexpected expenses were just the reality of household costs they'd never had to budget for because I'd been covering them. Dad, I'll come to the hospital and pay the copay directly to the billing department. You don't trust us with the money? I don't trust this family to tell the truth about money. I'll pay the actual medical bill, nothing else. I drove to the hospital and paid the copay directly. My mother's wrist was genuinely broken, the bill was real, and I was happy to help with an actual emergency. But when my father asked if I could also help with gas money to get home and maybe grab dinner since it's been such a stressful day, I knew nothing had changed. Gas money and dinner aren't medical emergencies, Dad. Handle those yourself. On the drive home, I realized something important. I could help when I chose to, with genuine emergencies, on my terms. But I was no longer the default solution to every financial inconvenience they faced. The difference between helping and being exploited wasn't the money. It was the choice, the honesty, and the recognition that my contributions mattered. They could keep testing my boundaries, but my boundaries weren't going anywhere. The family meetings started happening without me. I'd come home from running errands to find cars in the driveway. My aunt's sedan, my uncle's truck, my grandmother's old station wagon. Voices from the dining room, hushed but intense, that stopped when I walked through the front door. "Oh, Alex," my mother would say with forced brightness. "We were just discussing some family matters. Nothing that concerns you." Family matters that didn't concern me. In the house where I lived. About the family I belonged to. The message was clear. If I wasn't going to fund the family, I wasn't really part of the family. I started keeping track of these meetings. Tuesday evening, 3 cars, voices until almost 10 p.m. Thursday afternoon, 4 cars, my grandmother's laugh echoing from behind closed doors. Sunday after church, 5 cars, the sound of my father's voice explaining something with the passion he usually reserved for football games. I wasn't invited. I wasn't informed. I wasn't wanted. "What were you all talking about today?" I asked my mother after one particularly long gathering. "Just family business," she said, not looking up from her phone. "Nothing you'd be interested in. Try me." "Alex, you've made it very clear that you're not interested in family responsibilities, so we've stopped expecting you to participate in family decisions." The logic was breathtaking in its cruelty. Because I'd stopped being their ATM, I was no longer considered family. Because I'd refused to fund my own invisibility, I was being made actually invisible. But the real blow came 3 weeks later. I walked into the kitchen to find my mother preparing for what was obviously another family gathering. Good dishes out, her special lasagna in the oven, the dining room table extended with extra chairs. "Big family dinner tonight?" I asked, reaching for a bottle of water from the fridge. "Yes, we're celebrating Marcus's promotion." I stopped mid-reach. "Marcus got promoted?" 2 weeks ago. He's been made a senior marketing associate. We're very proud. 2 weeks ago. They'd been planning this celebration for 2 weeks and no one had mentioned it to me. "That's great news," I said carefully. "What time is dinner?" My mother looked uncomfortable. "Alex, I think it might be better if you made other plans tonight. This is really more of a celebration for people who support Marcus's success. People who support Marcus's success. I'd been living in this house for 23 years, and I wasn't invited to celebrate my brother's promotion because I'd stopped financially supporting a family that gave him credit for my contributions. "I live here," I said quietly. "You live here, but you don't participate here. You've made that very clear." I looked around the kitchen where I'd made countless meals, had countless conversations, been part of countless family moments. Now I was being told it wasn't my space during real family events. "Fine," I said. "I'll stay in my room." Actually, my father's voice came from behind me. We think it would be better if you went out for the evening, found somewhere else to be. I turned to face him. This man who'd raised me, who'd taught me to ride a bike and helped me with homework, who was now asking me to leave my own home so they could celebrate without me. You're kicking me out for the evening? We're asking you to respect that this is a family celebration for family members who act like family. There it was, the final verdict. I was no longer family because I'd stopped funding their lifestyle. Understood, I said, grabbing my car keys. Perfectly clear. I spent that evening at a coffee shop, working on my laptop, watching families at other tables laugh and share stories together. Normal families where being related meant being included, not being exploited. My phone stayed silent all evening. No texts checking if I was okay, no calls asking when I'd be home, no photos from the celebration I'd been excluded from. But the next morning, I woke up to something interesting, a notification from my banking app. In the past month, while they'd been holding family meetings without me and celebrating without me, my savings account had grown by $800. $800 that would have normally disappeared into their household expenses, while Marcus got credit for financial responsibility he'd never demonstrated. I lay in bed looking at that number, feeling something I hadn't expected. Relief. For the first time in years, I had money in my account that was actually mine. Money that would stay mine. Money that would grow into real financial security because I wasn't constantly depleting it to support people who saw my contributions as automatic and invisible. They could exclude me from their celebrations. They could hold their family meetings without me. They could decide I wasn't really family anymore. But I was building something better than their approval. I was building my own life, funded by my own work, on my own terms. And unlike their acceptance, my self-respect wasn't conditional on how much money I was willing to give away. 2 years later, I'm writing this from my own apartment. It's small, a one-bedroom place across town with decent lighting for filming and enough space for me to breathe without walking on eggshells. The rent comes out of my account, along with my utilities, my groceries, and every other expense that makes up an independent adult life. My channel now has over 200,000 subscribers. Brand partnerships that once felt like impossible dreams are now regular income streams. I've diversified into online courses, affiliate marketing, and I'm launching my own small makeup line next month. The girl who was told she'd never be as good as her brother is now making more money than he is, living independently, and building a business that actually matters to people. But more importantly, I'm happy. Really, genuinely happy, in a way I didn't know was possible when I was constantly walking on eggshells, constantly making myself smaller, constantly funding my own invisibility. The family situation has settled into exactly what I expected. They've maintained their preferred narrative, and I've stopped caring about their version of reality. My mother still posts on social media about her successful son and how proud she is of Marcus's career. She never mentions my business, my independence, or my actual achievements. I'm either invisible in family updates or occasionally referenced as going through a phase when relatives ask why I'm never in family photos anymore. My father still tells people that Marcus really stepped up financially for the family during their temporary difficulties. I've heard through mutual family friends that the story now goes. Marcus helped them through a rough patch by taking over household expenses when I was too focused on my hobbies to contribute. Marcus himself has gotten exactly what he always wanted: all the credit, all the praise, all the recognition as the responsible family member. He's also gotten all the actual financial responsibility that comes with that title. From what I've heard, he struggled significantly those first 6 months after I stopped covering bills. His credit card debt increased, he had to get a side job, and there were some uncomfortable conversations with my parents about exactly how much money they'd actually been depending on. But he's managing now, learning to budget, handle his own car insurance, contribute to household expenses, becoming the financially responsible person everyone always claimed he was. My grandmother still calls occasionally, usually prompted by my mother to check on me and see if I'm ready to come back to family events. I'm always polite, always loving, but also always clear. I'm doing wonderfully on my own, thank you. The extended family has mostly figured out what really happened, despite my parents' narrative control attempts. It's hard to hide financial reality indefinitely, especially when the person who was actually paying bills stops paying them, and suddenly there are money problems. Some relatives have reached out privately to apologize for believing the family's version of events. Others have shared their own stories of being financially exploited by family members who took credit for their contributions. I've become accidentally inspiring to several of my younger cousins who watched me choose self-respect over family approval. One of them recently moved out of her parents' house after realizing she was subsidizing her brother's lifestyle, while being told she was just helping family. The most satisfying moment came about 6 months ago when I ran into my father at the grocery store. He looked tired, older, and genuinely surprised to see me looking healthy and confident. "Alex," he said, and for a moment I thought he might actually apologize, might acknowledge what had really happened, might show some recognition of how wrong they'd been. Instead, he said, "Your mother misses you. Maybe it's time to put this whole thing behind us." This whole thing? As if 3 years of financial exploitation, followed by my choice to stop accepting it, was just a minor family disagreement that should be forgotten. "I'm not missing anything," I told him. "I'm exactly where I need to be." And I meant it. I don't wake up angry anymore. I don't spend my energy trying to prove my worth to people who were determined not to see it. I don't fund other people's lives while accepting crumbs of recognition for my contribution. Instead, I wake up every day in a space that's entirely mine, funded by work that's entirely mine, building a future that's entirely mine. The girl who was told she'd never be as good as her brother learned something much more valuable than being good enough for them. She learned to be good enough for herself. And it turns out, when you stop trying to earn love from people who've already decided not to give it, you find something much better. You find yourself. My business is thriving. My savings account grows every month. My independence is solid and unshakable. Most importantly, I've learned that the opposite of being exploited isn't being vindictive. It's being free. They still tell their version of the story where I was the ungrateful daughter who abandoned family values. I tell my version where I was the invisible daughter who finally decided to become visible on her own terms. Both stories are true from different perspectives, but only one of them ends with the protagonist living happily, independently, and on her own terms. That protagonist is me, and I'm done apologizing for having a happy ending that doesn't include them.